Hey, yeah. Used to beatbox in, taped up mouth, dreams on mute, heart face out. Now walk in like make that count. Faith in my feet, I break that doubt. Talk to the mirror, you built for this. Scars on my soul turn limitless. Locked in the room with an empty list. Now every you can on my hit or miss. They said sit down, I heard stand tall. They said pipe down, I wrote anthems on the wall. From the floorboards up, I rebuilt it all. If I stumble on the way, still refuse to fall. Shizzy Unchained, Shizzy Unchained. They wanted me quiet, I stepped out the cage. Turn up the rage, turn up the flames. Carve my own lane, now remember the name. Shizzy Unchained, Shizzy Unchained. Voice like a storm breaking out of the rain. Hands in the air if you feeling this change. Shizzy Unchained.
Welcome back to Shizzy Unchained, the show where I cover the sector of crypto and AI, and that sector is Bittensor Tau. I have an amazing live stream for you guys today. Today, we're going to be talking to Tom Tensor over at Babelbit. Babelbit is building something that's actually competing with Google in the way of speech. So what Babelbit is trying to do, from my understanding, and we're going to learn about this today, but Babelbit is trying to allow you to talk to somebody in a different language, complete language barrier. I know we all experience that, right? But allow you to basically have speech to speech without any delay. So the AI is predicting what you're going to say next. I'm going to repeat that because it's absolutely crazy. The AI is going to predict what you say next and translate that into that person's language. It's something really cool. And they're building with Bittensor. Bittensor's open source network where you can basically do anything you want. There is no permission unless Kant says so. No, I'm just kidding. But it's one of those things where it's the network that's really changing the way you hire engineers. Instead, you actually get some of the best engineers in the world all competing to help you grow your company, and then they get chain rewards for doing that, whether it's the alpha token and then they change the tau later. It's all, you know, it's all in there, but it's something awesome. Then the validators just make sure the miners are actually doing the work they said they're doing. So I'm really excited to talk to Tom today. I'm really excited to learn more about Babelbit, and I'm really excited to kind of dig into their feeling around the deregistration and everything that's happening with that as well. We do know, like, people on the timeline are talking about it. The great Mod came in and threw a whole bunch of tau into their pool just to make sure that these guys are staying around. And it does look like the community is rallying behind them. And all I ask is for you is if you support these projects that are out here building and doing really cool stuff, you know, potentially add tau to their pool, right? And that's what it's all about. Find the projects you love and add tau to their pool. Make sure that project, if you really think they're going to be successful, I mean, that's the beautiful thing about Bittensor, right? So I'm excited. Let's jump right in. Tom, welcome to Shizzy Unchained.
Wow, what an intro! And the theme song on the way in as well. I was thinking I've got to get myself one of those.
Well, I use AI for pretty much everything, just like everyone else does, right? So that's the best part about the world we live in, man. It's like a lot of people are scared.
Phones are just getting bigger as well. I think I can just walk into a room and just play that as I'm walking into a room.
All right, let's learn about you, Tom. Tell us, what's your background? What have you been up to in your life?
Yeah, man, I do love that question. And you know, and hopefully people will indulge me a little bit on this one. So yeah, you know, I've been around in tech a few decades now. So I started off, I was always into computers as a kid. Didn't matter what it was. Sorry, I'll be with you in a second. Sorry, kids are at home for holidays. Where was I? Yeah, so didn't really know what I wanted to do with tech, but I just knew I was going to do it, and somehow I just got a really good opportunity working on flight simulators back in the 90s, and just met the right people at the right time, and they gave me a break, which is what every kid wants, basically, isn't it? And
what is a flux?
Say again.
Oh, if you said flux, what is it? Flux simulator?
Flight simulators.
Flight simulator. Oh, wow.
Yeah, and this was like really cutting edge stuff back in the 90s. You know, where you'd have something the size of you know, like a proper data center server rack just for doing the visual system on it, and Unix boxes that they'd create, the models you'd fly around on, way too expensive to buy, but you'd hire them. You'd hire the equivalent of a Mac Pro for about 150 grand a year, basically. And so one thing led to another, and I just got a couple of copies of C for Dummies volumes 1 and 2, and I got halfway through the first book and I was like, I want to build, but this isn't how I want to build. So I basically sat and did all my MCSE exams through the late 90s. And for people who don't know what that is, this was basically the professional certifications of Microsoft products, and effectively it just meant that you just got the green light to just go into big enterprise situations and know what you were doing. And a funny story I like to tell people is, back then in those days, it was actually possible to know everything there is to know about IT, and that kind of changed. And I'm not saying I ever did, but I definitely knew people who were sort of up there. But that kind of changed when the new suite of products came out, especially from Microsoft. They got rid of a competitor to TCP/IP, which was like Novell, and saw them off. And then everything kind of got more complex through the noughties, and all that time I was just basically building and maintaining large enterprise networks. Spent a lot of time with a lot of UK PLCs, rolling out big projects, and then basically just got a break into investment banking. I was like, right, I need to step it up even more. I've stopped learning. Where can I go where they've got loads of money and I can learn more? And ended up getting into that, and somehow ended up getting into commodities, which was, one of my favorite subjects to talk about. And I did that for probably about 10, 15 years or so, where I'd basically work as part of big teams, delivering, designing, and maintaining large enterprise permissioned distributed trading platforms. Again, there's no one in the world who knows everything there is to know about one of these, but what you'd do is you'd effectively specialize in particular areas of it. And so I'd kind of sit halfway between the devs and halfway between the business, because I always wanted to be business aligned and be sat with the traders and be on the front lines of the markets day on, day out, basically just making sure that they could do what they needed to do. And I needed to understand what they did, and I needed to understand what the devs did. I needed to somehow merge it all together in the middle, basically. And so, and that kind of saw me up to a few years ago. And I was working for a big American hedge fund, hadn't enjoyed it for a little while. And the people were awesome, but just the work was just grinding me down a bit. And I thought, I need to do something different. And because I've always been into building businesses on the side as well, I basically got into property about 20 odd years ago, and had built a couple of successful property businesses. And I thought I was going to double down on that. And so I started really specializing and getting into some development around people who they were trying to set up in their own special accommodation rather than putting them in old people's home, and people who had physical disabilities, that sort of thing. I was really sort of gearing up to start doing a couple of those developments, whereas before I'd just done family houses. And then one day I had a day to go and meet up with a load of people who I've got a pension fund I manage, and I went along to a pension day, just minding my own business. Had all these other business plans and stuff that I was going to focus on over the next year or two, and they put a few speakers up at this pension meetup, and one of the speakers was Siam Kidd, and he's the one who tail-pilled me, basically. And he only spoke for about, I don't know, 45 minutes or so. It's pretty good for him. He usually likes to speak for longer. But I remember coming out of that room absolutely buzzing. I just immediately got it, and I was like, this is what I've been waiting for. And I had a good chat with him, and walked out of there, and effectively it just changed the direction of my life. And that was
what was it?
About a year ago.
What was it that he said?
He effectively just opened my eyes to the way that you could build a business and get access to businesses that normally you don't get access to unless you are someone who knows someone. and who has much deeper pockets than me, basically. So the idea of being able to get into that kind of community and get access to those kind of businesses, and I didn't know whether they were rubbish or not, but I spent the next 2.5 months going through it, just I spent 12 hours a day consuming everything I could read, everything I could listen to, everything I could find, and just parked all of my other business plans and roadmaps, and effectively just over the course of basically about a week or so, just repivoted head first into Bittensor.
That's awesome. And coming from, kind of a financial background there as well, did you know about Bitcoin and blockchain and everything before Bittensor?
Yeah, but here's the thing, Shiz. Unfortunately, when you work in financial services, you they're super paranoid about their staff insider trading or having any kind of edge that could come back to bite them. So you have to sign a lot of paperwork that says I'm not going to have my own trading accounts, or if I do, they're going to be nominated, they're going to be shared. Just putting in a simple trade, you have to put it with compliance, you have to wait a few days, you have to hold it for like a minimum of 30 days. And even it just started getting, and originally crypto, they didn't care about crypto. Then they started to care about crypto, and I had friends of mine who were in it, but it was just one of those things. I was just aware of it, but otherwise I was just focused on other bits. I got it, but I just by the time I really got it and thought, I might have a play, the ship had already sailed. So
Yeah, no, for sure. I think a lot of people think that way. And I think that's why people look at Tao differently, in the sense of, I have an opportunity to potentially ride that wave the Bitcoiners ran before. So just to stay on that, like, just learning about blockchain for the first time, what was that like for someone with your background? Like, because obviously, you're digging into the miners and the validators, but blockchain is something that a lot of people think is scammy, right? A lot of people think that, with the pump and dumps and the rug. What was your initial opinion?
Yeah, and it's scammy for the same reason that it's it's the people who've used it that have given it that kind of, it's just a technology, and it's been bouncing around for a long time while people try to find a use for it. And actually now they've found the use for it. When you take, and banks are just, and big corporations are just the perfect example of blockchain. If you take their finance, their payroll, their finance department, their payroll department, their pension department, their operations department, staff benefits department, anything that has to do with the running of the company relative to its people, when you think about it, all of those thousands and millions of people employed in those positions all over the world, the only thing they're trying to answer is, who do we have to pay and how much do we have to give them? That's it. And every single one of those questions can be answered cryptographically on a blockchain. And otherwise, you've just got this huge swarm of people globally employed in these positions who are just watching each other to make sure they do it right. Well, you don't need to watch each other when it's cryptographically signed. The maths watches itself. So from that perspective, I find it really interesting, and that's kind of what Bittensor's been able to use it for. They've effectively abstracted all of that detail around having a board or employees, or deciding who do we have to pay, how much do we have to pay them, and all of that is managed within a single blockchain. And obviously it does some other cool stuff as well with regards to the other aspects of Bittensor that are important, but fundamentally that's what it kind of solves from a business perspective.
Yeah, 100%. All right, so let's kind of keep going. So you were Tao pillared by Siam, and
big shout out to
then
Siam, by the way. Big fan of his.
Yeah, I was just actually watching him and Mark the other day, his co-founder, and it was a really interesting conversation. They kind of talked about you guys a little bit there. So, but let's. So
yeah, I know the one. Yeah.
After you walked out of that room, you listened to Siam. What was the next few months like for you? When did you decide to potentially even get into this?
So that night I basically started buying Tao. so not long, basically. And actually my biggest, do you want to know my biggest challenge for the first couple of months was getting onto the Bittensor Discord server, for some reason, every time I tried to use a link, it was just like denied. And so I was kind of on a bit of a crusade for some of that time as well, trying to find anyone who could actually permission me to the Bittensor Discord server. I remember I even pulled Joseph Jacks aside at the Proof of Talk that year, and I said, look, like, surely you've got to know someone who can actually get me onto this Discord server, because there's so much stuff happening on it and I'm completely blind to it. I kind of just had to rely on screenshots that other people would sort of grab and post up. But yeah, thankfully in the end, someone finally managed to, do something in the background, and finally I was on there. But yeah, otherwise the first few months were just spent me just deep diving, staking. And I would say to anyone watching this, it's like anything in life, you get out of it what you put in, and it's going to take you about, I'd say, 6 to 8 weeks minimum of hard study to really get past the subterfuge and sort of effectively the picture of what it looks like at first impressions, to really start to understand the underlying ebbs and flows, the personalities, the people who really sort of drive thought, opinion, getting into the different communities and being able to just filter out all the noise, because there is so much noise. But within that noise, there are absolutely critical bits of information that you need to know. Otherwise, you're just not helping the network. The network only is helped by positive, genuine, foresighted, considered, decisive action, and everything else is just noise that actually takes away from the network. So it's really important to just be able to acclimatize yourself into that and really start to understand, put a bit of money in, because certainly for me, that's what motivates your attention and makes it real. You've got to get this right, but don't put more, don't put a proper size in basically before you've got past that stage. And you'll know when you get to that stage, because you'll be able to start saying, well, that's rubbish, but no, that's legit, basically.
Yeah, 100%. Then you start watching shows like mine. That's when you're obsessed.
But you're part of this new wave of interest that came. Up until a few months ago, there was only probably just, I could count on one hand the number of people who were doing podcasts or talking about stuff. Yeah. And actually, since then, we've got you, we've got Jesus, and like there's
Gordon, Mark.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All of these guys that have sort of come in and really started to bring a new audience, a new way of looking at it, new understanding. Because it's interesting listening to the way you were talking when we first came on. Like, I haven't met a single person yet who's repeated the same interpretation and description of what Bittensor is, because every single person has a different description, and it's all based on your background and understanding of finance and product and business. And this is why it's so amazing, because, and I say this to a lot of people, I said, where else in the world, you show me one place in the world where you have this community that brings together, crypto bro meets business bro meets entrepreneur bro meets tech bro meets builder bro meets machine learning bro meets AI bro, and it just brings them all into this one incredible souffle pot, and sort of mixes it all together, and I just find it absolutely fascinating.
100%.
So I did that for a few months, and I was just staking and just getting into it, and I thought, right, this isn't enough for me, I need to get into more. I was like, shall I start mining? And I was just starting to look around, starting to get into mining. And then one of the things that kind of happened when I was in Paris was I'd swapped a few messages with him already, but I kind of felt like we saw eye to eye on some stuff around football with Max from Score. Like, I'd read this really good book on football statistics, and I felt like I had quite a good understanding of the football statistics industry globally, and there were a few things that School were doing. I was like, well, I reached out to him. I was like, look, I think this is a problem, or maybe you want to think about this instead. Like, this could be a good idea. And yeah, we just swapped a couple of ideas. There's nothing more to it than that. And then I ended up meeting him in Paris, and spent some good time with him and Nigel, and had some good chats around stuff. And it kind of, my relationship with them kind of stayed, and I had a really good idea after that. I thought it was a good idea anyway, where I had a couple of friends who were really deep into the music industry around doing commercials. And one of my mates, he'd had some really high profile commercial where he'd produce the music around it. That's like the sound effects, the music, everything that goes into it from that way. And I also had another buddy of mine who was like one of the leading people in London in an agency for creating global adverts, basically. And funnily enough, the two of them had met at my wedding, and they didn't even realize that one of them had already been doing work for the other, and we only worked it out afterwards. But anyway, I had an idea. I thought we can disrupt this industry. There's like probably about 10 to 15,000 pounds worth of money that goes into any advert you see on TV with regards to the music and sound effects you hear, and they'll be waiting a few weeks for that. And I was like, I had a really good idea where I thought I could build something on Score that could automate and produce the ability to manipulate and create what you needed just from a command line using him. And what he did then was he said, oh, that's a really good idea. Tell you what, I'll send Matthew Karras around your house, who's just started working with us, and you can talk some ideas through. And he ended up being founding Babelbit with me. I just want to say it was his vision. He's the expert, by the way, in speech tech. I'm just a builder, and I like to build things, and I was just up for his vision. So
sure.
that's kind of then how we ended up chatting with Yuma and getting launched and putting the team together, and where we find ourselves now.
So you reach out to him, you guys are talking. Is this just an idea at this point? Is this more than that?
Yeah. You talking about the music software bit, or
yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So I'd always been involved in music tech, whether that was making songs, or I was a DJ for a long time as well. But that's a different story for another day.
I'd love to hear that.
yeah, this was back in the vinyl days, basically. And so I'd always sort of kept one foot in that camp as well, and just meant I sort of got to know a lot of other DJs and music producers and stuff, which is how I came to know my other friends. And that's where I just started to put these ideas together about, well, that industry is like massively inefficient. I know a way that we can immediately knock on doors and get interest, and my friend already told me, look, that is a knockout idea that will kill the industry pretty much, certainly for the music where it's not licensed already. But again, nothing really came of that, because by that point I'd already started going down the road with Matthew over this idea to disrupt the global interpreter industry. Although we didn't actually know that's what we wanted to do at the time, we just knew that we could use LLMs for their native effectively use case, which is predicting what you're about to say. And that's kind of gave him at least the initial vision for, well, I think there's something here. I think we got some legs here. We can see what comes of this. And everyone who's listening to this will kind of already know what we're talking about if they've used Google. If you just go into the Google web browser and start typing, it starts to predict what you're going to say. And I don't know the exact mechanics underneath that, but I'd guess that's probably an LLM or some kind of LLM that you're talking to that's able to try and predict what they're saying. But it's starting to permeate into everything we're doing. But here's the thing. People don't realize just how underdeveloped this speech industry is. And the fact that you can only count a handful of big players on one hand, and the fact that most of their stuff, quite frankly, is SH1T. They're restricted by the fact they're trying to build a V2 or V3 of something they already built in the past. And they're trying to re-engineer that. It's difficult to turn a tanker around. So that's why we felt, we had first mover advantage as well. And the way I kind of explain this is, look, how is it that the Chinese car manufacturer Daewoo has come from nowhere and taken such a big market share to be one of the market leading vehicle manufacturers in only 2 or 3 years, whereas Honda, been around forever, is a brand and name everyone knows and trusts. Their valuation is 40 billion and they sit on assets of 80 billion. Like, that just goes to show you how restricted all of the incumbents are when it comes to reimagining or reinventing and re-engineering tech to keep themselves competitive. So it's possible to steal a march on these people, like we showed with a recent advert we put out.
Yeah, interesting. All right, so now you're basically creating Babelbit, right? Am I saying that properly? Is it Babelbit?
Tomato.
Okay.
It's just nice to hear people say it, basically.
For sure. So let's really kind of explain what Babelbit is. I mean, you did a good job so far, but let's really break it down to the core here. What is Babelbit doing, and what problem are they trying to solve?
Babelbit are, I say Babelbit,
Babelbit.
Babelbit are pioneering and progressing the boundaries of speech technology using LLMs. And in the same way, like a rising tide rises all boats, along that way, we've discovered niche, underserved markets where our technology advances can create a market competitive product. One of those use cases, we've done this by accident. One of those use cases is live TV dubbing. Turns out everyone's struggling and no one's got an answer, and we've already got something that is, we've had feedback to say it's different. The way we're innovating is different from the way everyone else is doing it, and you can see a noticeable difference with the outcome and results from the way we're doing it as well.
Interesting.
The ultimate vision of where we're trying to get to is having an API that people can pay to access, where you can get low latency interpretation of any language to any language, and ideally latency that's sort of under 2 seconds. A good interpreter will be able to do, will be able to interpret within 4 or 5 seconds. And if it's complicated language, or depending on the structure of the sentence, it could be as much as 7 or 8 seconds. We want to try and get there, and we're convinced that we can try and get there for under 2 seconds, basically, using LLMs.
That's interesting. So what languages are you right now trying to do? Because obviously an AI can do pretty much every language, right? Is that kind of where you're at with it?
Well, it's interesting, and we're now at the exciting stage of our company where we've actually got IP and stuff that no one else has got or no one else has done. So look, let's just be clear. We cannot compete with the big incumbents who have the benefits of powerful data centers. They can point at a model and train their own model. That's very, very time consuming. It's not the results are not guaranteed, and there's better ways of doing it. So by the use of let me just backtrack a little bit more on that. It's not just as simple. So people can get fooled into thinking it's just an LLM and a prompt, or an API over a prompt, and that's it. There's nothing else to it. There's so much more to it. You can, like, for example, our latest prototype is made up of multiple LLMs, and the way that we engineer the use case and the processes between them is what gives you an edge. And maybe someday we will be at the stage where we want to start training our own model, but at the moment there's percentage gains that are quicker and easier to get that you can use in real life immediately. So we've got a clear vision, and it's on multiple verticals, and the steps that we have to take are include everything that I've spoken about so far. But right now at this stage, we are taking the best that open source has to offer, and we're making it better, and we're architecting and engineering those to create market competitive solutions, basically.
Interesting. What does the team look like? How many of you guys are working on this?
So we've got 4 full-time employees, and it's myself, Matthew, and then we've got so we started it, and then we took on Josh, who Matthew had known for and worked on and off for over 20 years. And it was quite bizarre that Josh just happened to become available in the same week we were talking about who we might hire, because Josh is one of the, if not the world's leading expert in solving speech processing latency challenges. And so he's been with us since the start, and his input and ideas around how we engineer what we're doing and also create the challenges for the miners on Bittensor, which is something else we need to come to, have been absolutely invaluable. And then at the same time, we met Mika. Mika was, an experienced Bittensor miner. He was looking for a good project, and as it turns out, he also had a strong background in studying speech translation, digital processing as well, on via machine learning. So it was bizarre the way it's all kind of worked out. But what I've really enjoyed is we just got lucky in terms of like the personality fits. We all just get on anyway from a personal perspective. But what was also interesting is that I've worked in teams for longer than I can remember. Global teams of really, really talented, technically gifted people, but they've always been grossly inefficient. And this is the first time that I've ever worked in a team where I can genuinely say our sum is by much greater than our parts, and we've got just enough understanding of each other's vertical to be able to cover when someone's out of office, or working on something else, or if they need help on something. But ultimately, yeah, that we've all been able to come together and just within a few short steps, just be able to come up with a great product, and a great incentive mechanism on Bittensor. So it took us a long time to, trust me, building an incentive mechanism on Bittensor is not easy. You will get gamed, you will get exploited, and if there's gaps, they will find them. And what you're ultimately trying to do is you're not trying to make it absolutely exploit proof. What you're trying to do is you're trying to make it it's easier just for someone to join in and give proof of useful work than it is for them to try and game your system, which is kind of where we're at now. And I'd say we're probably seeing innovations out of Bittensor probably, I'd say at least once a week or once every couple of weeks. And this is innovations in an industry that, again, is underserved. The big incumbents are not established, and these are quite often world first innovations in the way that people are doing things.
Yeah, 100%. So where are you guys at with the project itself, with the product? Where are you at right now?
At the moment, we have effectively got two products. So our first product was, we took the best that open source had to offer and we made it better. And we made it better by effectively fixing some bugs on it and increasing the GPU efficiency on it by a factor of 4, but that only, so performance wise, it's as good as it gets globally. You can't really get any better, but it only does a handful of languages and it only does them one way. So it's perfect for some of our dubbing work, but problematic for interpretation work. What's interesting though is we had our own model that we effectively took and I want to say trained, but it wasn't. It was kind of like fine-tuned and engineered and compiled with another one, and that was actually something that now competes with that on latency, but also is pure multilingual and both ways. And I've even tried dropping in some surprise languages, like some are, like Hindi and Belarusian and some other sort of really random languages, and it just auto detected them and picked them up straight away. So that was really good to see, and that has now in some ways, certainly on our benchmarking, overtaken the best that open source had to offer, and that's Babelbit IP.
Yeah, that's awesome. Babelbit IP. So okay, so what are your miners actually doing? What are the miners doing for Babelbit?
Yeah, good question. So the incentive mechanism we started off with didn't really help us a lot because we didn't really know what the miners were doing. What we were doing was we were just trying to create a mining community and for miners to understand what we were doing, what our vision was, so they could start getting the experience and ideas together they needed when we went live with our V2 incentive mechanism, which is what we use now. And we have a challenge where miners will try and predict what French sentence is about to come based on words that are revealed, and then they're scored for latency and some other confidence benchmarks, and that's how they're able to earn mining rewards, basically. But they only get a sort of, sprinkling of miner alpha initially first of all, they have to basically win some initial challenges, because we didn't want to get over. We didn't just want to get absolutely saturated or overwhelmed with models that weren't competitive or didn't really do anything interesting. We only really wanted the models submitted from the winners. So once you kind of won that initial stage, then allows your hotkey access to an API where you can upload how you did it or how you think you did it. And we've then got some automation around how that's then harvested, reviewed, scrutinized, and then we effectively enter it on their behalf into what's called our arena. It's kind of on trend at the moment in Bittensor to have that kind of adversarial distinction between miners, and we then test them under controlled testing conditions, so we know there's no exploits because it's us doing it, and we effectively then do them side by side and test them, and that's when you can get the lion's share of the emissions, basically. But yeah, again, we're probably seeing genuine innovations on that probably once a week to once every 7 to 14 days. We're seeing genuine innovation from the miners to improve on what was already done, and they're at a really good standard now. Like, they've driven a large part of where we've been able to get to with the dubbing model that we've got now that we're using for live live dubbing from one language to another.
Yeah, love to hear it. Miners, are permissionless active employees, right? In that way of being able to just come online. They chose you to mine, right? That's one thing I think is pretty cool. And then you have some of the best talent. What's it like working with some of these people?
Really good. So we have a few superstars, and we're very conscious that we have to try and maintain a degree of separation between us and the miners. I don't know any of their first names. I just know their Discord IDs. Exactly. And because the problem is, as soon as anyone gets a whiff of any kind of relationship between you or any other miner, then there's instantly accusations of collusion from the people who aren't winning, and we kind of just steer clear of that. The terms are clear. Look, if you come and compete, if you win and you've got something genuinely good, you're going to get paid, and we can find just like a really good working partnership from that respect, where you get helped, we get helped, basically.
Yeah, for sure. Let's talk about your validators. Who actually are you guys using, and what's that relationship like? Because I speak to a lot of subnet owners, and the validators are some of the the conversations that are really kind of hard to surround yourself. So you're basically telling the validator, hey, this is how you check if the job was done correctly, and it's probably a lot when it comes to the speech narrative, right?
No, so that's not been my experience, and I can tell you why. So validators are busy people. They're trying, and running a validator, especially like a bare metal validator, is expensive, and it needs 24/7 like human basically assistance. And what validators really want is for you to give them something where they can just press run, and then that handles all of it. So where the validators add value is that if you're thinking of exploiting the network and you are decentralized, i.e. you've got multiple validators processing your work, what it means is that if there's any shenanigans going on where you are gaming it, the validators are going to be able to double check. So they're not going in and double checking by default, but if the accusation is raised, they have the ability to go in and double check what you're doing, which is why it was such an important part for us when we went live with our new website and miner dashboard, that everything is completely transparent. Every miner can go and see what every submission of theirs is, and they can see how every validator scored. And if validators aren't in line, there's going to be vTrust issues. Validators are going to get deregistered pretty quickly, and you kind of find some sense in the noise by using the validators in that respect. And we've always run our own validator. It's something really important to do, because otherwise you can't really understand what a validator is properly doing or how it's going with a validator. So problems you tend to notice on validators bubble up with yours first and foremost. So you need to have skin in the game with the validator to really get a clear understanding of what activity is happening with your challenges.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. Let's talk about revenue. This is something that a lot of people in the ecosystem need to hear, right? Like when I talk to someone like Mark Jeffrey, I'm like, hey, do you like this? I really like the subnet. I
Yeah,
think they're
when
doing really cool
Rev.
stuff. He basically says, well, do they have revenue? And it always comes back down to that R word. Where are you guys at with that?
Yeah, we're just going through our first customer proof of concepts. The good thing about, so at the moment we're currently targeting live dubbing, just because we've got something that's competitive, and we've already started speaking with resellers basically who are desperate to find a solution, because all of the incumbents quite often are getting rejected because they're just not good enough. So we're going through some proof of concepts at the moment, and the good thing about these kind of situations is, because we're B2B, once people choose you, you then go on a journey together, and things have to go really, really wrong for a long time before they effectively reinvest some budget into going through the purchasing round again. So these agreements tend to be with big corporations, very, very sticky. They build a lot of infrastructure around you, and they're true partnerships, not just with you, the end user, but also the reseller that sits in between you. And it's really important that we use resellers, because they're the ones who have all of the contacts already in the industries we're targeting. They also know from a tender perspective who's tendering for what, and they're also more often than not got a back catalogue of tech that they've already got lined up on previous contracts, so they can upsell with new tech that comes in that's better. So thankfully my co-founder, I don't have any experience with working with resellers, but thankfully my co-founder has built global businesses using these before, so this is just like water off a duck's back to him, basically. So
Yeah.
I'd say, to sum up, no revenue yet, but I'd be very surprised by the end of the year if we didn't have some good contracts signed and up and running. And the beauty of this kind of tech is it's really, really simple to scale, and the scalability, the cookie cutter scalability of this kind of tech is really stable. It's really well trodden path, and it can be really, really automated, and the redundancy you can put around its stability is pretty straightforward.
Yeah, for sure. Who is your ideal customer? Is it somebody building a device, like a hardware device? Maybe you put it in your ear, someone else puts it in their ear. Like, and you mentioned resellers, but like, who is your ideal customer for this product?
My ideal customer would be the National Health Service in the UK. It's the fourth biggest employer on the planet, and they are absolutely hampered on a daily basis with interpretation problems, and these can be life and death situations. And it would be not only a great contract and great to have on our website, but also from an ability to give a genuinely great product back, and give something back to the country, and an underserved industry that's struggling, would be just the cream on top of that, basically. So yeah, they would be my ideal customer. An amazing vision to have would be that we end up licensed on smartphones, and that you just plug an earpod in and just start talking. But I think we're probably so far away from that realistically, a small nimble company like us needs to play to its strengths, and where we're going to be really good is being able to work is stay low, move fast, iterate on products quickly, and be able to stand in front of customers and say, well, if this is what you need, yes, we can do this. Whereas you're standing in front of a big incumbent, you can't go into a car dealership and say, well, actually, I'd like that. Oh yeah, I'll just go back to the factory and get them to redesign it. No, this is basically how it comes, mate. And they, more often than not, that's what you're going to have with the big incumbents. Like, well, this is basically how it works. You kind of need to work around this. But smaller, nimble companies like ours, where we genuinely have the knowledge to press and progress innovation, is where we can find a really good edge and get a really good reputation for ourselves.
Yeah, Interesting. Recently on Bittensor, we've had a lot of changes. We've had Root Reborn, we've had this new one, 444. Here's your opinion on how fast the Bittensor blockchain is moving and what that means for Babelbit.
So I could put two different hats on and give two different answers to this. From a subnet perspective, obviously, is pretty devastating for us when we'd already been smashed by Tailflow and Net Tailflow. That just happened to coincide with a period while we were busy building, and we made some mistakes. You know, everyone is new to this subnet game, and all we can try and be is good students and try and be a net positive. But yeah, we got smashed by those two iterations of a mission delivery, and then this on top, obviously from a subnet 59 perspective, was not helpful. However, from a tail staker's perspective and someone who loves Bittensor and tries to stake on great subnets, I can see why Jake did it, and I think it was a good idea from that respect. You know, he is very, very conscious. He doesn't have to be told by people that Tau is going sideways, and we need to break free from this sort of rubber band that ties us to Bitcoin. We need to make more people realize that we are the first crypto project that solves real world problems. And I'm even loath to call it a crypto project because it's not. It just has a crypto on and off ramp. We just took the best that crypto had to offer from the blockchain technology. So I get why he does it, and what he does, you know, why he did it and why he's done it is obviously he wants people to know that when they buy Tau, most of it is going to go into these subnets that are a bit more proven, a bit further down the road than us, already got good revenue, good customers, good reputations, and you've seen the reaction in terms of the Tau coming off of Root, Tau coming in from exchanges, the elevation in the top 32, and rightly so. You know, I know a lot of the people who run these subnets. Absolutely take my hat off to them. Just wonderful bunch of human beings, wonderful bunch of builders. Just the community in general, the way that we've kind of rallied around despite the grumbling and moaning, just says a lot about the ecosystem. I think that we're all, you know, privileged to be a part of every day.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. I loved your answer. So right now you guys are kind of up against it a little bit when it comes to deregistration. We could wake up tomorrow and you guys could potentially get deregistered. What does that mean for your company and everything that you guys have built and are building?
Yeah, no, I love that question, and I'm really glad that we get a chance to chat about it because it's really important. So one of the other problems is, let's take two corners. You've got ideology corner, you've got reality corner. Ideology corner, you come into Bittensor, you stake some subnets. You want to stake them on the typical criteria that any startup is valued at. Who's in your team? What's your vision? What have you done so far? Is this your first rodeo, or you know, am I giving you learning money? And you know, what's the likelihood of you having any kind of success? And by the way, people tend to think of success as being very binary. You either become Google or you fail. You know, all you need. There's like a common theory where all you need is 25 customers for most startups, and you're good at least for a while. I don't think, certainly for our first year and a half or so, that we're any different. Obviously, we're trying to aspire to get as many as we can, but it's not a binary outcome. So I don't think you can fail like that. But ideally, standing in ideology corner, we want to be tested on our merits. Who are you? What have you done? What are you doing? And unfortunately, I think, and I'm basing this on my own hallucination of what I think is happening, as well as feedback that we get, because we're always talking to the community. We've got a big circle of supporters that we talk to in great depth all the time. And we had a few whales exit because of our liquidity pool size and our effectively liquidation price. Once you start getting down to the bottom 10, this becomes an important factor. And although people love what we're doing and they love our progress, and you know, there's a lot of bullish things we can talk about, there's still that haircut that you take at the bottom if we get deregistered that a lot of people don't want to stomach, and that's rightly so. I don't judge them for that. You know, I'm a long-term holder in Babelbit. I haven't sold, and I don't plan to, but I can't ask that for everyone because they're not in the same position as me. Having said that, a couple of things coming out of the recent changes that might make a difference. I'm hoping that some validators get behind us with the root reborn and pointing some root emissions at us, as well as we still wait and hope that they can sort out the chain bloat challenges and open up the cap from more than 128. So it's because as soon as that liquidation issue and liquidation pool problem goes, straight away, standing in reality corner, that changes. So it's a question of timing. I can't tell you what's going to happen. I've some lovely messages from people saying that we want to support you, want to buy some more. At the moment, where we are, the haircut is minimal because most of the haircut's already been taken off the table. But I think we'll probably know more in the next sort of couple of weeks, depending on what releases come. If any other subnets with lower liquidation pools or prices, overtake us and give us another stay of execution. I would love it if we stayed on SN59 for multiple reasons. I don't want anyone to lose money, especially like Mog. Big shout out to Mog. He's been huge for us, massive support, a great guy. And I don't want him to take a conviction haircut. I don't want to take a conviction haircut, but I don't want any of our supporters to take a haircut on supporting us. I hope that we can stay on SN59, but we've got a company behind this. The company will live on regardless, and we know, or pretty confident we've got offers of relaunching if we need to, but only as like a break glass emergency. Otherwise, we want to put all of our efforts into saving SN59's position, basically. And for a start as well, it means I won't have to get this rebranded, basically, if I want to wear it out. I could probably cross it out and rewrite it with some permanent marker, but yeah, probably wouldn't obviously look that great.
Yeah. And I think, that comes with 444, right? 444 is potentially Const's way of going from 128 subnets to 256. This will solve pretty much all your issues. You guys will not be in the bottom of the 256. There's no shot, right? There's no shot. But that does.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, I hope so.
Well, I mean, I just don't. I could, I could see it maybe in the bottom of the 128, but 256, there's no way. And I think that hopefully this gets pushed in quicker, because I do think that you guys are building something that's going to take time, but in the same way, it could be something that changes the way we think about open source and the way open source is being used when it comes to the company and the miners and the validators. So I do think there is a lot of opportunity for Babelbit to potentially be a top subnet one day. It's just the one thing that you guys need is time. Am I correct on that?
Well, you ask any subnet owner who's in our position, they'll tell you exactly the same. Like, time is a massive commodity, and actually we probably lost quite a few weeks over this year trying to use other subnets that weren't quite ready to use us. And this is not free time. You only get a certain amount of rolls of the dice for the startup, and when you lose a week or two here or there trying to sort of plumb yourselves into other subnets that ultimately aren't able to support you in the way they need to, then that time is costly, not just in how much runway we have, but also like staff salaries and that sort of thing as well. We love Bittensor. We're here to be a net positive, and we've tried to follow the Bittensor thesis from the start, which was launch here, build from scratch, use the miners to compete with the big incumbents, and become state of the art in your area, which we did over a 10-month period. Yeah. The landscape changed over that time. I've got eyes all over Bittensor all the time. I've tried to change and adapt the company as we've been going along. A big problem that's cited was our discipline around our fiscal activity, around owner key emissions. We tried to run as lean as possible. And I say to people, for us to have got from a standing start to being state of the art and being competitive in less than a year on less OPEX than a single exec's paycheck at one of the big incumbents, in any metric or benchmark that you use to assess startups, that is astonishing. And I feel like we've done what we set out to do and what we promised. I wish we could keep people in the community happy with the fact that I've we've had to try and pay staff costs with our owner emissions. Like I've never taken anything out of Subnet 59. I've never spent any emissions on myself. I'm working for free at the moment, just because I believe in our project and our progress from so wholeheartedly, and the view and progress I see from the inside, I couldn't be more bullish than I am, basically. But again, we then have another challenge, which again we've got some good supporters rallying around us to help us with, to just try and impart and help share that news, progress and information with all of our stakers and supporters, so they get like a good view of and a good feel for how well we're doing as well, so they can do what they're doing with confidence.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned working with other subnets. You working with Vosense, right? With a great Special K.
Yeah. So that was relatively so we've been talking to them for a while. That was relatively recent. I don't want to. That's not got nothing to do with the other subnets I mentioned before. I just want to make that clear.
Yeah.
Koyuki, absolute force of nature. Great
Amazing.
ideas. Great business. Business head on her, and we try and keep up with her as best we can. Our ultimate aim is to effectively just provide any interpretation services they need for like live feeds, for sort of efficient processing, and working with video as well for anything they have on video processing that requires like live dubbing and stuff as well. Our technology works for all of these, whether it's live or recorded or whatever. And actually one of the extra features that our technology bakes in that a lot of the incumbents aren't able to do is we can change voice when a person changes. So we've got that diarization of different voices to make it sound more natural, and also as well, it's not just limited to interpretation from one language to another. It can even do it in the same language, just to try and make it more efficient, where you get a lot of noise that people make with the ums and the ahs and filler words that don't really mean anything.
Yeah, I mean, that's something I definitely struggle with for sure. My ums and ahs for sure. Yeah, it's awesome. Working with Special K. I know you guys. It's something that was said around a lot of discords and stuff. That a lot of people are very bullish on that connection with Vosense and Babelbit. But recently, you guys have had something really big pop up, and that is the Babelbit versus Google. The voices you'll hear in the following clips are automatically translated from the same live German news broadcast. One version is Google Translation API, and the other is Soda Language API. Can you talk about this real quick, about you potentially beating the Google model with your model?
Yeah, so again, this is interesting because you can come back to benchmarks on this, and what's quite important to know is that I mean, when it comes to benchmarks will show you anything the person who created the benchmark wants you to see. So you always have to take it very, very subjectively, but we've had to develop our own benchmarks for use of the miners to kind of help show nuances of progress on different areas of that. And the benchmark, or the difference that you'll see with Google this time, is not to do with latency, it's to do with realism. And what you'll find is that Google will try and go for accuracy, and they won't invest certainly this is their beta product at the moment. They haven't really got their heads around how to handle the applying the cultural flow and rhythm and I guess identity of a particular language. It's almost like they just tried to cookie cutter one to the other, which just doesn't work. So I feel like that's one of the things that sets us apart and was able to demonstrate the superiority of our product here, because theirs just isn't usable. It just annoys you. You just want to turn the sound off and just use subtitles, just because it's so abrasive to the ears. Whereas I feel like ours has got genuine flow. It's concise. It's got natural English on this instance, American English, that natural kind of rhythm and flow that you'd expect from a native speaker, rather than someone just trying to go for a translation.
Love that. That's really cool. So where are you guys at with that? Like, what was the intention of that post, Babelbit versus Google?
Because we wanted to, so it comes back to live dubbing. There is no current technological solution for great live dubbing. It just doesn't exist. Even now, if you try and look at, here's a good example. How many times have you looked at a YouTube video and this is pre-recorded, it's not live, they've had time to go away and do a good job of creating, translation or in, a different language from this, and it's absolutely terrible, and they haven't even got it right, and it's all obviously automated and done via technological flows. You haven't had a person going through it, marking it manually afterwards. But even pre-recorded stuff, a lot of the technology they're using now, even the biggest companies in the world at doing this, don't have a good solution. That's pre-recorded, let alone live. So this is why we think that this is such a good vertical for us, because being one of the sort of early movers and having a good product out of the gate, once you've got your nose in the door and established that relationship and that trust, that counts for something that will make people happily overlook having to do with a big incumbent and all of the communication layers that tend to go around your relationship with those. You can come and look me in the eye and I can come and tell you we've got a great product, and if it doesn't meet your expectations, you can come and look me in the eye again, which you just don't get the benefit of doing with a lot of the other choices on the market.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's I think that's a lot bigger, and the sense of you guys being open source, right? Is that something that people can say about you guys? You guys are building
open source. If you tried to sell open source or the idea of open source, even just a few years ago to someone, you'd probably struggle. That change with LLMs and vibe coding, and software has no value anymore. The only value comes with a guarantee that a human puts on it and a support team to keep making it to squash bugs and make it fit for what you need it for. That's the only place where value is now. And having one company with a team of devs trying to support a product versus an open source product that has 10,000 devs adding to it, changing it, giving it the tweaks that they need, or how often have you? I don't know. So often I've used an open source bit of tech and it just doesn't quite do what I need it to. So you can just set an issue or make a change, and that's the power of open source. Open source is eating closed source software, and I think selling someone on open source now is way easier than it was a couple of years ago. It's predominantly the people that are still clinging onto their closed source software and need it to pay their mortgages that are still clinging onto the idea that no, closed source is best. Otherwise, open source rules all.
Yeah, I love it. Open source rules all. This has been awesome, Tom. I really appreciate your time, man. We're at that hour mark, but I'd love to give you stage one last time, talk to my audience. If there's anything left to say.
Do you know what I mean? I've said a lot about Babelbit and Bittensor already. I just wanted to take this opportunity just to give a few shout outs to people that have really kind of helped us over the last year. The community around Bittensor is extraordinary. People go out of their way, and these are busy people, and they couldn't have gone out of their way to help us more than they have. Yuma have been great. They gave us a chance. Big shout out to Yuma. They get a lot of flack, but I've only ever seen them as a net positive and being supportive and helpful whenever we, in all of our dealings with them from the start until now. Siam and Mark from DSV and all the other crew at DSV, really helpful, really supportive, and just what they do for Bittensor in general, I think doesn't get the respect it deserves a lot of the time. I want to give a big shout out to Will and Steph at Macrocosmos. They were huge for us when we were launching, really, really helpful, spent a lot of time with us when we were talking through some of the finer details about how we wanted to launch a subnet. Got to give a big shout out to the Score guys, Max, Nigel, Tim, probably one of the most complete teams in Bittensor, and the way they've scaled and brought new people on is basically, I think, the North Star, the Polaris star for everyone else in the ecosystem. Just a lovely bunch of guys as well, and I hope I'm not missing anyone out there. Let me just double check that because this is important to me. Yeah. Oh, and obviously, yeah, Mog, the guys at Tau Stats, and the guys at Manifold as well. Again, really helpful when we
Manifold
were
being Targon, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the Manifold Labs guys. Yeah, and actually, even just around a couple of exploits, a couple of them have sent me long, detailed messages before about about exploits we were having and what they thought, how it was happening and what they would do about it as well. So yeah, but yeah, again, yeah. Really glad I managed to get a chance to give those shout outs out. And if there's anyone else I have forgotten, which I hope I haven't, then apologies.
Love to hear it, man. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time, and hopefully you guys are really killing it this time next year and really pushing that. So I guess my last question for you is, let's say we're sitting here next year and you guys had said Babelbit is very successful. What would that success have to look like?
I see it two ways. Not only have we been able to stay on SN59 and create a great product that people can use, and with good, happy, with a lot of customers, and they're all happy. But also, one of the things I try and do is I always try and pay the help we got forward. So I'll always try and make a point of reaching out to new teams and helping people that are new to the ecosystem get up and running. And if there is anything I can do to any other subnets owners or staff or anything out there to help them, just give me a shout. I'll always try and help people if I can. So yeah, I think it's twofold. We're still here, and we've been able to help a lot of other new subnets as well. That I think would be a good definition for success for us.
Love it, man. Love it. Thank you so much, Tom. See you next time.
All the best.
Shizzy Unchained. Whoa, hey, yeah. Used to be boxed in, taped up mouth, dreams on mute, heart face out. Now walk in like make that count. Faith in my feet, I break that doubt. Talk to the mirror, you built for this. Scars on my soul turn limitless. Locked in the room with an empty list. Now every you can on my hit or miss. Gone. They said sit down, I heard stand tall. They said pipe down, I wrote anthems on the wall. From the floorboards up, I rebuilt it all. If I stumble on the way, still refuse to fall. Shizzy Unchained, Shizzy Unchained. Hey! They wanted me quiet, I stepped out the cage, turn up the red.